Today. Welcome to today's webinar. Uh, let me situate everything. Today's webinar is titled "A Whole Lot of BS." It's behavioral science about cyber security. My name is Alan Jones, and I'm the Director of Communications and Event Marketing at TEXPERS. We appreciate you joining us on this important topic today, and I promise we have a lot to cover, but we'll make it engaging and insightful. We all know how crucial cybersecurity is, especially for those of us entrusted with managing public employee retirement systems. The stakes are high, and we're not just protecting data, we're protecting the livelihoods of retirement systems, futures, and countless individuals who count on us to keep their information safe. But let's be honest, cybersecurity can feel overwhelming at times. And you have complex passwords, multi-factor authentication, security alerts. Is easy to get lost in this whirlwind of what we're supposed to be doing to keep our system safe. And the constant stream of news about cyber attacks can make us wonder if our efforts are really making a difference. And we get it here at TEXPERS. It can feel like a lot, but today we're going to break down why that is, and more importantly, what we can do about it. And at TEXPERS, we're thrilled to partner with the National Cybersecurity Alliance for this session. Their recent research from at the NCA takes us deep into the public's attitude and beliefs about security. And in today's webinar, we'll explore this research together and what it reveals, what it means for us as trustees and administrators, and how it might align or diverge from what you experience in your own systems. And we're excited because throughout the session, the NCA's is going to answer some important questions. So what I'm hoping is you as attendees, you'll have a couple of important questions that you'll kind of keep in your arsenal. You'll think about how your attitudes towards cybersecurity will align with those of the general public. And you'll kind of ask yourself, are there practical strategies that you can adopt to make cybersecurity more manageable for you, your members, and your organizations? So if you're like me, the best part of these kinds of events are getting to walk away with some practical information that you can apply right away, some strategies that can help you secure your systems and the sensitive data that you oversee. So I don't want you to feel like that you're kind of drowning in some technical jargon or endless processes. And our guest today, Lisa Plagmeyer. Lisa, I hope I'm getting your
Yep.
last name
You got it right. You got it right.
correct. Uh, she's one of the leading voices in cyber security space, and she has an extensive experience in both the private and public sectors. She's passionate about making cybersecurity accessible and understandable for everyone, not just tech experts. She's worked with numerous organizations to help them build strong, resilient security cultures, and her work is focused on using behavioral science to help people make better security decisions. So we're incredibly fortunate to have her with us today to share her insights and expertise. So I just want to say that during the webinar, I want our attendees, especially those that are here to earn a 1 hour of continuing education credit for today's session. You will be participating in some polls, so we'll get to see your responses and see the participation. So that will help us judge that you were able to participate and interact and throughout this session. So please be interactive, participate. Don't be afraid to click on these polls. At the end of the program, I'll ask you to email me at Allen, ALLEN, at texpers.org, that you are seeking that 1 hour credit, and that will help me identify you and allow us to be sure and credit you for your participation. I'll remind you again at the end. Without further ado, let's dive in and hear from Lisa about how we can leverage behavioral science to strengthen our cybersecurity practices. Lisa? Oh, can't hear you. There you go.
Can you hear me okay now?
We
Okay.
can. Thank you,
All
Lisa.
right. Let me know if there's any issues. Every once in a while, I get a gremlin in my computer. Okay, so hopefully now you can see the screen as well. So as Alan said, I'm with a thing called the National Cybersecurity Alliance. We're the founders of Cybersecurity Awareness Month. We've been doing this together with DHS for 21 years now. It's kind of started in the wake of 9/11, and we've been continuing ever since because unfortunately there's bad people doing bad things with technology that we need to protect ourselves from. I'm the executive director. I actually live in Texas, so really happy to be in Austin, and I'm the first executive director of our organization that hasn't lived in Washington, D.C., and I'm really happy about that. So as he said, we're going to talk about some BS today, some behavioral science. So this is what's known as COMBI, the behavioral science model. This is super simple. This just says we need capability, which is knowledge. When it comes to security, you're probably getting that from training your employer's having you take, or things like today. Opportunity, which is easy because a lot of us are sitting behind a computer all day or carrying a phone around in our pockets. So we have lots of opportunity in our behaviors with technology. But motivation, that's the hard part here. We are emotional, less rational than we like to think we are, very squishy human beings. And if we don't feel like doing something, it doesn't get done, no matter how much capability and opportunity we have. So think about asking your kids to clean their room and they say, Mom, I don't feel like it. If we don't feel like doing things, the thing is not going to get done. So for the fourth year in a row now, we've been doing a survey of the general public. This year it was in 7 different countries, the US, the UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, so all the 5 eyes, plus Germany and India this year. And we asked people about these 6 things: their password habits, using multi-factor authentication, installing updates, checking for phishing and really all signs that somebody's trying to trick you, backing up your data, and this year for the first time we asked about AI. So we're going to ask you some of the same questions that we asked the general public in our survey. And Alan is standing by with the poll questions. And so this is an interactive session. It's a lot more interesting if you answer all the questions than if you just listen to me talk at you for 40 minutes or so. We also, in addition to these 6 things, we asked people about their feelings about cybersecurity. So before I worked in security, a long time ago, I started my career with Ford Motor Company in marketing and advertising. And one of my favorite ad gurus is a guy named Seth Godin. And he says, rightly so, facts don't change people's behavior. Emotion changes people's behavior. So because of that motivation piece of the behavioral science model, we ask people about their feelings. And so my first poll question for you today is about your feelings. I bet you didn't think you were going to come to a presentation about cybersecurity and somebody was going to ask you how you feel. But this is our first question. How do you feel about this statement? So Alan, can you bring this one up? I prioritize staying secure online. How do you feel about that statement? You disagree or agree or somewhere in the middle? I'll give him a second to pull up the poll. And there's about 8 or 9 of these questions. Now, when we surveyed the public in these different countries, we surveyed people age 18 all the way through retirees. When I'm doing these presentations like I'm doing with you today, the answers will look a little bit different because you're all of working age if you're on this call. And so chances are you're getting some experience, maybe some training on cybersecurity. And so your answers might look a little different than the people in our survey who aren't in the workforce, don't have access to security training. They're age 18 all the way through retirement. So Alan, how's it going? Alan is trying to, trust me, he's trying to bring up the poll questions on Zoom poll right now. He's got them loaded in there. I know he's prepared. It's just a matter of figuring out. I wish I could tell you, Alan, but I haven't had to share them myself, so I don't. Should be in the, since you're the host, I'm guessing it's in the settings somewhere for you. In the meantime, why don't you guys put your letter in the Q&A or in the chat. Let me see, is the chat enabled? Yeah, the chat's also enabled. So A is strongly disagree and E is strongly agree, or are you somewhere in the middle? Just throw it in the Q&A or the chat, and then I'll have some idea of what you're thinking. We got an E and a D so far. Anybody else want to chime in? Let's see how many people that we have from 18 plus, including the two of us. All D's and E's so far. Anybody else? A lot of E's strongly agree. So you're probably thinking to yourself as you think about this question, like, why would I answer anything but D or E that I agree with this? Like, this is like motherhood and apple pie. Like, you know, most of the public agrees with this as well. Over 80% of people agree with this. Very few people disagree or feel neutral. But who's going to say they aren't careful not to get defrauded when they go on the internet? Well, actually, it's younger people. So if you look at this chart, the agrees and the strongly agrees, that's the blue bar. Gen Zs are the least likely to agree with the statement and the most likely to actually disagree. As you can see, this goes up as we get older. Probably because our bank accounts look a little different when we get older than they did when we were younger. We have more to protect. So we're probably prioritizing this a little bit more because we've got more assets, more on the line. My next question for you. Staying secure online is under my control. How do you feel about this statement? Go ahead and drop your answers. Go ahead and do it in the Q&A. We're going to keep doing that until we figure out the why the polling isn't working. So I'm going to let Alan keep working. But in the meantime, go ahead and drop your answer to this one in the chat and we'll see how you feel. A little less scientific, but that's okay. Staying secure online is under my control. So why do we ask people while you're putting your answer in the chat or in the Q&A, why do we ask people if they feel like they have any sense of control here? When you think about it, if you don't think that what you do matters, if you don't think you can influence anything or have any control, that's not just a lack of motivation, that's demotivating. If I don't think my actions matter, I'm not even going to try. A lot of people can feel like things aren't under their control when the company they do business with has a data breach, or even a company they don't do business with, like the background check company has a data breach. That can feel like it's out of their control. So let's see what you guys are saying on this one so far. I'm pretty sure we have all D's here, so some would agree. I'm really glad that so many of you agree with this statement. The public agrees, but not to the same degree. There's still a third of them that aren't sure. And I think it's because of organizations having data breaches that they can't control. The thing here, though, what's really important, and what I think you understand because of the answers that you gave, is that when those things happen, when our data is involved in a data breach or some sort of security incident, it's even more important that we take some control of our own habits. We have to work even harder to protect ourselves because now the bad guys have so much information about us. So our own our own habits become more important. So now I'm going to ask you about some of those behaviors that were on that list that we showed at the beginning. And we're going to start with phishing. Oops, I skipped a slide. This is a 1 through 5. If you want to tell me how you feel about this one, you could just use the chat. I'm hoping that Alan can get the poll questions up as we go. We'll see how that goes. Technical difficulties this morning. Sorry, everybody. Here's the question. How confident are you in your ability to identify a phishing email or a malicious link? So 1 is not confident at all. 5 is very confident. Don't get those mixed up. 1 is not better in this case. 5 is more confident. I'll give you a second to put it in the chat or in the Q&A. So I'm glad so many of you are saying that you have some confidence here, because not feeling confident at all is not a good way to go through life, no matter what the subject matter is. A lot of 4s. 1, 3, 1, 5, and a lot of 4s. So you can see here what the public thought. The 4s and 5s are the blue lines, the high confidence. This is almost universal that we feel this way. If I had the math here, I'm guessing that your scores would be even higher than the general public. I say it's almost universal because look at Germany there in the middle. As somebody who lived in Germany for 13 years, I can tell you that I am not shocked that they're a little more self-effacing, maybe a little more critical, a little more uh, timid about their about their not quite as boastful as the rest of us about their confidence, not overconfident. So that's what I want to warn you about. Confidence is a good thing. Confidence that you'll recognize something malicious is not a bad thing, but overconfidence is the risk here. We all feel like it's going to be somebody else who's going to click. It's not going to be me. I don't fall for simulated fish. I don't click on these things. I know better. The problem is the math just doesn't work out on them because a lot of bad things still start with a phishing email. So somebody is doing the clicking. Even those of us who don't think that they're doing the clicking are still susceptible. There was an article this morning, Arctic Wolf put out a research study that said even IT and security people have clicked on simulated fish and written down passwords and had other bad habits. I was not shocked by that at all. So just remember that these things are really well crafted these days. Now they're using AI to make them even harder to recognize. So just remember that we're all human beings, and at some busy moment in the day, we're all vulnerable potentially. So this is a picture of a phishing email that came into an organization that I used to work for, and it's getting a little old, but I still use it because it's such a good example, and it's still a tactic the bad guys use, and it's really hard to detect. So this came from a legitimate sender address, from a customer's address to one of our salespeople. Now you can imagine if you're a salesperson and you get a DocuSign email, this is a good thing. This is the whole point of your job, is to get a signed contract. And so because this came from a legitimate sender address from the customer, the salesperson clicked on it. Luckily, our technology blocked him from going to a site that was malicious, but I asked him, were you expecting a DocuSign email from this customer? And he said, no, I was actually expecting an attachment, a PDF of a signed contract, because we are in the sales cycle. And so, but he said he was going to just send me the signed contract as an attachment. I just figured he changed his mind. So that little difference between what the salesperson was expecting and what he got, that should have caused him to pick up the phone and call. How does this happen? How do we get a phishing email from a trusted sender address, from a customer, from a vendor, from a partner, anybody? In this case, the car dealership, our customers were car dealers. In this case, the car dealership had a network compromise. So when bad guys get access to email accounts, they're not in there like the hacker in the hoodie reading through all our emails. They don't have time for them. They're going to use technology, auto forwarding rules and filtering rules, and they are going to try and find threads really quickly where they can jump in and send a fish that looks contextually appropriate. So this looks close enough to what the salesperson was expecting to get that he clicked on it. So as I said, he probably should have picked up the phone and called. 87% of us will do this. This number was 82% last year. This goes up every year. Better to pick up a phone and contact if something feels a little off. I don't even care if you can't identify, is it the link, is it the email address? If it just doesn't feel right, it's better to pick up the phone and call. A lot of us also, 2/3 of us will check for phishing. Your organizations probably have a button that looks something like this in your email that allows you to report phish with just 1 or 2 clicks. Now, when something's really easy to do, we don't have to be that motivated to do it. When something's harder to do, we got to work up a whole lot more motivation. So these buttons that only take 1 or 2 clicks, this is your IT team making it super simple. You can be really lazy. You don't have to be very motivated, and you can still report phish. So when you do this, that helps to keep your whole organization safe. And you can also do this with Gmail these days as well, if you use that in your personal life. So the next behavior on the list, this is my favorite section, is passwords. Passwords have largely been a failure. They haven't done what it is they're supposed to be doing. Are we able to get the poll up yet, Alan? What do you think? Nope. Okay. All right. So
I'm
go ahead.
sorry, it's not working. I don't know what's going on, but it isn't working. We'll have to do
Okay,
the chat.
that's fine. We'll keep rolling. Go ahead and put your answers in the Q&A here. How long are the passwords that you usually create? just on average across all your accounts? Are they 6 characters or less, 7 to 8 characters, 9 to 11, 12 to 15, or 16 characters or longer? So as you can guess, so the federal government has changed their advice on how long our passwords should be. And as you can guess, they're not telling us they can be shorter. The advice now is 15 or 16 characters or longer. Length is even more important than complexity. So the longer it is, think about using a passphrase, the longer it is, the harder it is for a password cracking tool to crack. So again, it's not that hacker in the hoodie trying to figure out what your password might be, trying to decipher it. They're just using software to do this at scale and do it very, very quickly. The longer it is, the harder it is for that software cracking tool to crack it. It'll take much, much longer to do that, and they're likely to move on to a different victim. So let's see what you guys said to this one. Let's see, lots of C's, which is 9 to 11 characters. We got one person or two people that said 7 to 8. So I don't see a lot of people saying 12 to 15 or 16 characters or longer. That means we all have a lot of progress to make here. The recommendation is that it be really, really long. Now, most accounts are going to also force you to make it complex. Unfortunately, complexity, it doesn't slow down a password cracking software tool as much as length does. But because the websites require you to use special characters, numbers, letters, all those things, then you're left with our recommendation, which is long and complex. My next question for you, how often do you use unique passwords for your important online accounts? So unique means really unique. A lot of people will think up one password that's complex and they can remember it. But then what they do on different websites is they add a few characters or they change a few characters. That's not truly unique. And then important online accounts. Yes, we think about our financial services accounts, especially the people on this call. But our email, that's really important. So some people will say to me, Lisa, I don't have anything of value to a bad guy in my email account. Well, your email account itself has value to a bad guy. Your password reset and MFA frequently tied to your email account. So somebody getting access to your email can mean they get access to other things. It's also a bad day if somebody sends fish to all your contacts. Same thing with social media. It's also a bad day if somebody takes over your Facebook account and sends direct messages to people in your friends list because they're trying to spin up a friendship scam or a romance scam or get them to click on something. Meta also does not like to give people their accounts back when they've been taken over. It's very hard to regain control of your social media accounts. And a lot of us have a lot of pictures and a lot of friends and a lot of interactions in there that we don't want to lose to a bad guy. If you think about it, you didn't have to show your driver's license to start a Facebook page. So Meta really has no way to prove that you're you, that you are the legitimate owner of that account that you're seeking to get back control of if you've lost it. So also really important on your social media to use unique passwords. So let's see what y'all said here. Let's see, B's the majority of the time and fair number of D's some of the time. Interestingly enough, nobody's saying A all the time and nobody's saying E never. So you're all in the middle somewhere. The public is better at this than you are. I need to say it. If we believe that the public was being honest here, they are better at using unique passwords all the time. This is really, really important. Here's the reason why. So before I was in security, Yahoo had a big data breach more than 10 years ago now of usernames and passwords. And at the time, I just thought, who cares? If you're like me and you have any gray hair, you had a Yahoo account back in the day. When you were going online in the late 90s with the sound of your modem and your AOL and a giant computer on your desk, you probably had a Yahoo account. We all did. It was one of the first big companies on the scene when consumers were going online. I hadn't logged into that in a million years. So I just thought, if the bad guys have access to that, they can have at it. I don't care. What I didn't know is that they're going to take usernames and passwords stolen in one breach, and they're going to use technology to just spray those across the internet and pray that they get into something. They also know that we like to iterate on a password. So we like to just use a core password and change a few different things here and there, or iterate on the same password over time, just change little things about it over time. And so there is software they've written that will work through all those different iterations and just try those passwords on any. They don't even have to know where we have accounts. They're just going to do this at scale using technology. They're just going to see what they can get into. This is why most websites now will time you out. If you've had 5 bad attempts, then they're going to lock you out of your account, and this is why. So you say, okay, Lisa, I get it. They have to be long and complex and they have to be 100% unique. How am I supposed to remember all these things? Well, that's my next question. If you want to throw your answer in the Q&A. A through H here, what is your preferred method of remembering multiple passwords? Do you write them down in a notebook? Do you keep them on a document in your computer? Do you store them in your phone? Do you email them to yourself? Do you just remember them? Do you save them in the browser? Do you use a password manager? Or do you just reset them every time you need to log in? For the behavioral scientists that worked on this study, we didn't even think of that last one until people started writing it in, and then we finally had to add it. That had never occurred to me that people would do that as a method. So let's see, we have some A's, some password notebooks, a couple of people using password managers. That's fantastic. We have one person here storing them in their email. All right, so I am gonna, let's see, one storing them in their phone. Another password notebook. All right, we're gonna look at what the public said here. For the 4th year in a row, the public loves their password notebooks. This is not one of my favorite answers. I just don't believe that nobody ever has access to that. You never take it on vacation or on a coffee shop, or nobody is ever in your house doing anything where they might get a hold of it. I also don't know that it would seem incredibly inconvenient to me to have really long, complex passwords and then to have to look those up and type those every single time. Are you really using really long, complex, unique passwords for every single account and then typing those in by hand from the notebook? That feels like a lot of work to me. My least favorite answers here are storing them in your phone or keeping them on a document in your computer. If you're using maybe a password protected note or Excel spreadsheet or something, if you get a malware infection on that device, the only thing between a bad guy and all your passwords is the one password that you have or the PIN protecting that document. So not multiple layers of protection there. They just have to get by your antivirus software, which happens every day, unfortunately. And then they have to crack that one password with a password cracking tool, and boom, they have all of your passwords. So none of these things are 100% secure. There's never any such thing, but there are better answers and worse answers. And so our favorite answer is using a password manager. And I'm even okay these days with you using like what's in Google Chrome that's acting more and more like a password manager. I'm less worried than I used to be. So these are our recommendation. Long, complex passwords on everything. It's a lot easier to do that with a password manager. It's going to give you a random password in the blink of an eye that you can use. If you install it on your browser, it's super, super simple to use these. These are great for families. We have probably all texted a password to somebody in our family or asked the family member to text the password to us. And then they also text us the MFA code. Texting is not a secure method of communication. So if you're taking care, like me, if you're trying to help your young adults with their affairs and then aging parents with their stuff, this is the safest way to share passwords in a family. And for even you to share them across all your devices to use an account so you have access to your password manager on every device. These are all using strong encryption to store your passwords and then multiple other layers of protection to store your passwords. These are just some of them. I would ask you to read if you're trying to find one, trying to pick. Tom's Guide, Consumer Reports, PC Mag, they all have reviews of the leading password managers. Use a free version for a couple days, see how you like it. If you don't like it, try a different one, because if you follow somebody's recommend, if I tell you what I use, but you don't like using it, then you're probably not going to use it even if Lisa recommended it. So it's important that you find it easy to use. You're more likely to use it. So these help us break our other bad habits with technology, because they will tell you if you're using a password that's already for sale on the dark web, or one that's potentially too short, or you use it on too many different accounts. And some of them will let you do the MFA within the password manager as well, which is super, super convenient. Now, I can log in using facial recognition and multi-factor authentication and password manager. I can log into my accounts faster than if I had to type my username and password just by myself with my own fingers. These are incredibly, incredibly convenient once you get used to using them. You can't imagine without one. So I mentioned multi-factor authentication. This is something that most of us are aware of these days. It's that thing your bank makes you do when you want to log into your account. It's older folks that struggle with this the most. So if you have aging family members, friends, clients, please help them with this. We don't even call it the same thing everywhere. Amazon has an OTP, a one-time password. Some Amazon and Google do a lot of this behind the scenes, and we don't even realize that there's MFA happening, or we don't know where to go in the settings to set it up, or there's different ways to do it. There's a code that can be texted or emailed to you, or a YubiKey, or a authenticator app. All this lack of consistency and ease of use makes it harder for aging Americans to do this. So I'm going to ask you to do a good deed this Cybersecurity Awareness Month and help some of the older folks in your circles to enable this on things like their email, their social media accounts. We'd have a lot fewer accounts that have been taken over by bad guys on Facebook if everybody had MFA turned on their Facebook account. So as I said, we're pretty good at using this on financial services accounts. Most of them will require this. If you're at one of those companies that doesn't require it, then you got to know that people like me are out there saying you should probably do business with somebody else because this is really that important. Almost every financial services firm I know requires this of their customers, so it's enabled by default. You can't turn it off. There's no place to reset it. There are companies that will allow you to maybe not have to use MFA more frequently. You can, ask it to remember you for the next 30 days or remember the device that you're on. But if you're a financial services firm and you're not requiring this of customers, then I'm going to tell you that you're definitely behind the times. We still need to get better at using this everywhere. A lot of other accounts don't require it, like financial services accounts do. And that's problematic because once we use this, the data shows that we're likely to keep using it. We get used to it. It doesn't feel like that big of a hassle. But getting people to enable it, as I said, especially older folks, getting them to go into the Facebook settings and figure out where it is and turn it on, that's the part that's difficult for us. Dates, backing up our data and AI. Here's what we learned. 43% of us presume our devices are just automatically secure somehow. 62% of us have turned on automatic updates. So that's our recommendation, but we also recommend that you power down your devices once in a while, maybe once a week. Some of these updates can get hung and won't complete the installation until you've powered down the device. So that's why we recommend that, because it doesn't always work as intended. Don't forget about your home router. Both Russia and China have done some bad things in this country by getting access to people's home routers, individual citizens and small businesses. The routers were either end of life, which means they're no longer supported, you need to buy a new one, or they weren't updated, they weren't running the latest firmware, or they were using weak or recycled passwords on the router. So think about that. That's really easy to do. You Google the manufacturer's name and on their website, it'll tell you if you're using, you can do a check to see if you're using the most up-to-date firmware. Make sure you're on their legitimate website. All the other IoT devices, like I had to buy a new fridge lately and I tried to buy one that wasn't going to connect to the internet. It's really hard to do. All these things that we connect in our houses can potentially need updates, and those updates usually have security fixes in them. So really important to keep up with that stuff. Backing up, this is something our employers doing for us at work. We don't usually think about it at home. We recommend the cloud backup services, super easy to use and very affordable. And then finally, we asked about AI this year for the first time. 38% of people admitted to putting sensitive work information into an AI tool without their employer's knowledge. In your sector, I am 100% sure that your organization has an AI policy. Please know what that is. You might be being blocked from some of these things, which is a really good idea. It's a free-for-all right now. Not all AI is problematic. It depends on what it is, but there's way too many organizations actually putting intellectual property into open AI tools. So you're essentially giving it all away to the internet. If you wouldn't want the whole world or your biggest enemy or your biggest competitor to know it, it should not go into an open AI tool. There are AI tools that companies can license and use in a way that doesn't leave them quite so open. Just make sure you know what your company's policy is here, and know that everything you put in there, it's not just about what you're getting back, what you're getting out, it's about what you're giving away. So just think of it that way. It's a two-way street here. So finally, I have two last questions for you about your feelings. How do you feel about this statement? I find cybersecurity intimidating. I'll give you guys a second to answer this one. You can throw it into the Q&A there. Does this stuff intimidate you? Okay, so we have some agreement, some disagreement. I'm happy that some of you don't find this stuff intimidating. I know before I worked in this field, I found it incredibly intimidating. So if you agree, I can understand why. I would say that the somewhat agrees have it here. Let's see what the public said. There's more agreement than disagreement. So if you add up the agree and the strongly agree, you've got 44% of people compared to the 27% that don't feel intimidated, and then a whole bunch of people that are neutral or aren't sure. So for those of you who said that you were somewhat agree or strongly agree, I'm going to blame this guy. He shows up all over the place. He shows up on the nightly news when there's a data breach. He shows up in our security training at work. He doesn't have a face. This kind of imagery is incredibly intimidating. And then you can lump in the militaristic words like threats and attacks and defenses and all these things. I think at some point, the belief was that fear would cause us to change our behavior, but it's a really bad motivator. The media definitely doesn't help. 44% feel scared due to media coverage, and 47% say the media's portrayal of security makes it seem complicated. So think about this, the binary floating across the screen when they're talking about technology, like, I don't know what that's supposed to mean. That makes it all seem very, very complex. More complex than it needs to be, for sure. We also ask people if they're frustrated by this stuff. And unfortunately, and especially in the financial services sector, people can definitely feel frustrated. So there's a fair amount of frustration out there. There's probably some security controls around you at work that make it harder for you to do things that people that work in other sectors can easily do, because the company's trying to protect the organization, the security team is trying to protect the organization. And so maybe it's a little bit harder to do some things, and you can feel like this. You can even work on the security team and feel like this because the bad guys are just at it 24/7. So there's lots of reasons why people get frustrated. The data breaches in the news can frustrate us. And then there's also a fair amount of worry. 58% of us worry about falling victim to cybercrime, and 50% of us actually feel targeted. So not random, but this is actually targeted at me. I think pig butchering is making this worse. I'm going to put that in the chat. If you haven't watched, there's a John Oliver episode where he covers pig butchering. I'm going to put this in the chat. It's a rude term. It's actually the Chinese term. It's just translated for these types of scams. So John Oliver has a segment that's on YouTube that I can highly recommend to you. So these are those texts that we're getting these days. I got one a couple weeks ago that said, I left my shoes in your car. They're just hoping I'm going to respond. I'm going to say, oh, wrong number. I'm going to be polite because I think there's somebody without their shoes. What's happening is you now have 5 of these encampments in the world where Chinese organized crime is human trafficking victims. So they are advertising these as call center jobs from poor Asian countries. And when they get folks, they give them a plane ticket. They go through a whole interview process. They give them a plane ticket and they get them on a bus and take their passport. And they are then slave labor There are 200,000 people that have been human trafficked into these 5 encampments, and their job is to scam Americans all day. And their lives depend on it. There's death, dismemberment, all kinds of torture that is happening in these encampments. They're mostly in countries where we don't have the influence to stop this. Chinese organized crime has corrupted the government officials in these countries, so those folks are profiting from this as well. And so far, the reported losses alone are $10 billion in 2024 of Americans, of private citizens. So this far surpasses things like ransomware and other things you might have heard about in cybercrime. Those are reported losses, so the real number is probably more like 20 to 50 billion. So you get this text that says, I left my shoes in your car. What they're hoping is you're going to respond. Then they're going to try and start an online texting, some sort of relationship with you. Maybe they'll move it to an encrypted app, move the conversation to Signal or something like that. And they're going to start to tell you about their lives and get to know you. There's plenty of us that are lonely and looking for human connection. This is what they're capitalizing on. And before you know it, you're going to see pictures of their very attractive lifestyle, and they're going to say, "Oh, my uncle helped me make a bunch of money in crypto. I can teach you what he taught me." And you're going to end up in a crypto scam. It could also be a romance scam, a friendship scam. Pig butchering is basically all the scams together until there's nothing left of you, until the pig is completely butchered. So most of these look like random text, but they can also look very targeted. My neighbor got one 2 weeks ago that included so much personal information about her that she felt like a bad guy was sitting out there in a car in front of her house. There's so much information about us for sale on the dark web. There's so much information that we've put out there ourselves on our social media profiles, or other people have tagged us and said things that give a lot of personal details. And so it's really easy if you're scamming for your life. You're going to take the time to do some research and maybe send a text that is very, very threatening and seems very, very personal, and you have the feeling that this person knows you or is right there in front of you. So I can understand why people feel targeted. Just delete these things, and please tell your aging loved ones about these scams as well. The losses are significant, and we're a little flat-footed right now trying to get our arms around this as a country and as international law enforcement, but our nonprofit is working at it along with a lot of other nonprofits. But please tell your friends about these things. Somebody's asking, does this information apply to public sector pension funds? Do the funds, staff, or administrators need to do differently from what we're currently discussing? I'm not familiar enough with the regulations in this space, but I would be surprised if they're very different, to be honest. But I'm going to see if Alan has an answer to that, or if anybody else on the call wants to chime in on that question. These 4 things, the basic things we're talking about for Cybersecurity Awareness Month, we've got an extra one added in this presentation, but it's watching out for phishing and all kinds of social engineering, long, complex, unique passwords, which probably means you need a password manager to do it. Using multi-factor authentication on everything and keeping everything up to date. Those are basic, good cybersecurity habits for every individual on the face of this earth. It doesn't matter what sector you're in, what your job is, what you're doing. That is like some of the basic things you learned when you learned how to drive. If we did these 4 things consistently, we would make a massive dent in global cybercrime. We wouldn't have as many of the problems that we have today. But we don't all do all these things. So that was one of the questions we also asked in our survey. Has training influenced your behaviors? So as a result of the training that you've had at work, have you done these things? So we've talked about MFA, reporting phishing, watching out for all those things, emails, texts, all of it, using a password manager, keeping things up to date, using a password manager to help you use strong and separate passwords, completely unique passwords, backing up your data. We also asked if people didn't change anything at all, or if they already do all these things. So the most popular answer here, and this is true with every organization that I talk to, is being better at recognizing phishing. Most of your organizations are probably sending you fake fish, simulated fish, and that's helping you to recognize these things. So I credit those programs. A lot of us also, when we realize how bad our password habits are, we will start using MFA. And then stop using the same password on everything. And then the fourth most popular answer here is using a password manager, followed by updates. Only 4% of people didn't do anything at all. So if you're one of those people who's made any of these changes as a result of training you've had before, then I want to commend you. And if you haven't made any changes as a result of the capability or knowledge that you got, if you haven't found the intrinsic motivation yet, I want to invite you to join the rest of us and make some changes. And the next time you take security training, I want you to feel like this. I don't want you to think about the hacker in the hoodie. I want you to feel empowered. Education is empowering. If you know how to do these things and you find the motivation, then you can make these things happen. This is not that difficult. So I want you to feel empowered. And I also don't want you to think about the hacker in the hoodie or the bad things that could happen if you don't do these things. I want you to, for your motivation, I want you to think about peace of mind. I want you to think about how much better you're going to feel if you do these things. I know when I started using MFA on all my accounts, I slept better. I didn't worry as much. It is far less likely that there would be an account takeover if that I would lose control of one of my accounts, or my account would be wiped out if I was using long complex passwords on everything that were unique, and MFA as well. So I want you to look on the bright side here, and I'm going to give you some encouragement and tell you you're going to feel a lot better if you do these things. So that's it for me today. I have a minute or two for questions, but I invite you to visit us at staysafeonline.org. We've got lots of advice that'll help you and your families and your customers. It's all very plain spoken. We are the translators. We're the ones that try to translate very technical things into very simple things that we all are capable of doing. We also have a series on our YouTube called Cubicle Series, and it's also at cubicleseries.com. I'm going to put that in the chat. This is like watching an episode of The Office, but it's the Office of the Bad Guys. And then on our YouTube, if you've got aging parents like me, on the Stay Safe Online YouTube, there's a series called Mom Don't Click That. And that's to help you have conversations with your aging loved ones and have some empathy about trying to help them with their technology. Somebody's asking how efficient is it to block a caller, unsubscribe, or report spam. So you can hit the unsubscribe button on spammy emails if you're 100% sure that that really is marketing spam. There have been cases where a bad guy has used that unsubscribe link. So make sure the link doesn't look weird. Hover over it first, where they've used that unsubscribe link to deliver malware. So if you went to, say, an industry conference and you're suddenly getting emails from vendors the next week, then that was probably because the conference sold your email address, and that would make sense that you're getting that kind of marketing spam. So yes, unsubscribing, by law, those companies have to unsubscribe you. It might take a little while because those emails are scheduled out in advance. And so, but yes, unsubscribe. I'm a big fan of not getting more email than I really need. And then reporting stuff as spam or reporting it as phish, that absolutely does something. You're not going to probably get a response, especially from Gmail. You might not even get a response from your employer if you report phish, but there is an automated process that kicks off where they're going to check to make sure if that email is malicious or not. And then if it's sitting in other people's inboxes, they're going to make sure that they take it out of anybody else's inboxes. They're also going to look at the indicators of compromise. So they're going to look at the threat. So do we have other emails in people's inboxes that are coming from the same address or coming from the same IP address? Are they all going to the same link? They're going to look at that email, and they're going to make sure that they don't have other similar emails in people's inboxes that they need to delete before somebody clicks on the email sent by the bad guy. Blocking the caller. So the thing about these calls that we're getting is that they're just going to pivot to another phone number. There's just a lot of improvements that we need to make in telecoms before we fix that problem. So yeah, you can block the number, you can report it, but chances are that you're just going to get another one. If a vendor has notified you that there's a breach, what is the best thing to do? So they're going to offer you free credit monitoring, and I tell people if it's free, you should take it. It doesn't hurt anything, but it's depending on what kind it is and what it's doing. It's not always preventing anything bad from happening. it's a rear view mirror. It's telling you somebody's already tried to take out credit in your name, or somebody's already successfully done that, or used your credit somehow. So we also tell people to freeze their credit with the main credit bureaus. You can unfreeze it in just a matter of minutes. If you're like me, I leased a car lately. I'm sitting at the dealership. I unfreeze it. They run my credit. I freeze it again. Easy peasy. What that means is that nobody can run your credit without your permission. And I think it also cuts down on the junk mail of the free credit applications you get in the mail for credit cards. Um, Okay. If you guys have any other questions, you can drop us a line at info@staysafeonline.org. We strive to answer all of our email. But thank you very much for your time and attention today. I hope this has been helpful.
And going back to the person that asked about how this relates to pension systems, and I will say that, JP Morgan Chase experienced a data breach that exposed the sensitive financial and personal data of 451,000 retirement plan members. There was also the California Public Employees Retirement System that was affected by a data breach involving third-party vendor PBI Research Services, which suffered a breach of the company's Move It transfer application. And the incident exposed the data of 769,000 retiree and beneficiaries. So those two examples alone just show how, a simple phishing scam or, anybody. So I really recommend that you look at these various things that Lisa shared with us, and either
Yes.
implement them at your own offices, or either individually, or implement them with your staff, and share them with your annuitants as well, and educate them, because even them in their private lives, they can improve on their habits, because even they can be prime targets, and they can have something that ends up spreading into your funds, or accessing, something that ends up giving access. So you never know how it's going to spread. But we really appreciate your attendance today, and we hope that you learned something. And don't forget to email me at alan@texpers.org.